Recent disasters are just the beginning of greater tragedies. Welcome back, everyone, to Mind Podcast. Humanity is entering the era of the end times, a phase where morality and traditional values are rapidly deteriorating. People are increasingly swept into the whirlpool of fame, wealth, desires, and power, leading to a surge in negative karma everywhere. Moral standards once highly regarded are now dismissed, while immoral and unjust behaviors become widespread. Good and evil are mixed, truth and lies are difficult to discern, plunging society into an unprecedented state of chaos and decay. The end times are a period filled with challenges. Evil paths rise, tempting people to go astray, while righteousness is obscured. The emergence of sinister phenomena and the degradation of the soul demand that humanity awakens and holds steadfast to genuine values. Without this, people risk being swept into the vortex of spiritual destruction. In this context, only those who can perceive and awaken their true nature will be able to overcome the trials of the end times. In ancient times, when someone mentioned cultivation or self-cultivation, they would immediately be revered, seen as individuals blessed with a profound spiritual mission by heaven, with long-standing virtues and merits. Back then, when discussing the Buddhist or divine path, people's hearts were not only filled with reverence, but also intertwined with unwavering faith, viewing it as sacred and self-evident. Beliefs in deities, karma, and reincarnation form the foundational pillars of social morality. In modern times, however, when someone speaks of cultivating Buddhism or practicing the path, they are often ridiculed and mocked, as if the purity of religion and spiritual practice has become a joke. From a society that once revered sacred values, we have transitioned into one that turns its back on tradition, where the virtues our ancestors once safeguarded are now dismissed as superstition and backwardness. One of the typical examples of this moral decline is seen in films like the stylistic gangster series The Bund, where scenes of violence and crime are exaggerated and romanticized. Many viewers watch these films and perceive them as a reflection of reality, subsequently imitating those brutal behaviors without realizing that real life is completely different from the world on screen. The moral decay of society is not limited to violence, but has also spread to other negative phenomena such as gambling, drug trafficking, and even promiscuous sexual behavior. Things that were once considered shameful and despicable are now normalized, accepted, and even encouraged. This troubling loss of control in society has become more alarming as these issues have spread not only in urban areas, but have also begun infiltrating rural regions. These areas were once considered conservative and preservers of traditional values. Rural youth who used to live simple and honest lives can no longer maintain that purity. They now dare to do anything, disregarding morals and consequences, as if no ethical principles bind them anymore. The collapse of social morality has spread not only in specific regions, but across the entire globe, dragging humanity into a cycle of self-destruction. This decline is not only limited to behavior, but has also spread into art and culture. If we look at the modern music industry, this change becomes evident. In the past, to become a singer or musician, one had to undergo rigorous training, master techniques, deeply understand music theory, and possess genuine performance skills. However, today, merely having an unusual appearance or some distinctiveness allows a person to step onto the stage, shout a few lines, and be hailed as a true music star. The sophistication and emotional depth seem to have been forgotten, replaced by chaotic and soulless sounds. Blind media promotion has turned mediocrity into phenomena, overshadowing the true value of art. This is not limited to music. Visual arts have also fallen into a similar state. Artworks that were once celebrated for their finesse and technique have now been replaced by meaningless chaos. A few random strokes on a canvas or even the ink marks left by a cat's tail can now be called art. People attribute grandiose names like abstract or impressionist to these works, but in reality, they are a deception, a destruction of artistic value. In the past, the more refined and skillful an artist was, the more recognition and praise they received. Today, true art has lost its meaning, replaced by the release of dark, unrestrained human instincts. Even seemingly simple things like children's toys have not escaped this transformation. In the past, dolls and toys had to be cute and endearing to be popular. Nowadays, the more grotesque and bizarre they are, the more sought after they become. Skulls, demonic figures, and even repulsive symbols like feces are displayed, sold, and loved. The reversal of human concepts has reached unimaginable levels. Beauty is deemed outdated, while ugliness becomes fashionable. Values that were once honored are now forgotten, giving way to distortion and chaos. Looking at the broader social landscape, it is clear that humanity is on the brink of self-destruction. Moral values have been pushed to an unrecognizable state, and people seem unable to realize that they are plunging deeper into darkness. Without moral values as a guiding compass, humanity easily falls into the whirlpool of degeneration and corruption. Buddha Shakyamuni warned that during the Dharma-ending age, society would witness the rise of demons in human form, even appearing within temples to disrupt the Dharma. The most frightening thing is that many people fail to recognize their presence or understand the extent of the damage inflicted on society. Humanity is stepping into the era of the end times. A period has emerged where many orthodox religions worldwide no longer possess the ability to save humanity. The root cause lies in the fact that the original scriptures of these religions have been altered, distorted, and misinterpreted over time. The inner essence of the teachings of these original religions is now treated as mere academic studies. Even Buddhism is seen as nothing more than a branch of pure philosophy for analyzing the unexplainable by modern science. This has led to a situation where monks and clergy read scriptures without truly practicing them. Temples and monasteries have turned into miniature societies, plagued by internal conflicts, thus losing the pure essence of places of cultivation. Some individuals have profited from the decline of Buddhism, with attachments to fame and fortune surpassing those of ordinary people, making it difficult for them to save themselves, let alone others. Many renowned monks, abbots, and Taoist priests rely on their limited understanding and lower-level perspectives to interpret sacred scriptures like the Buddhist sutras or the Bible. These interpretations not only mislead people, but also distort the profound meanings of the scriptures. The teachings of enlightened beings contain extraordinarily deep connotations, which can only be understood when practitioners continuously elevate their levels. Any modification or misinterpretation of the scriptures is a distortion of the Dharma. Books claiming to help explain the scriptures often stray far from the true essence of the Buddha Dharma. If the authors have not attained the level of enlightenment, how can they comprehend the higher meanings of the Buddha's teachings? Their attachment to fame and gain has led them to actions that disrupt the Dharma, guiding practitioners into the maze of personal ideologies. It is unfortunate that some even propose that religions should adapt to modern society. However, the Buddha Dharma is an unchanging cosmic truth, as indestructible as diamond, and cannot conform to a degenerate humanity. Such actions create enormous, indescribable karma. Those who write and misinterpret the scriptures, severely disrupting the true Dharma, have long fallen into hell without realizing it. Humanity, over many lifetimes, has accumulated immense karmic burdens. Some individuals, due to failed cultivation in previous lives, have retained a small amount of blessing in this life. When reincarnated, they possess certain supernatural abilities, such as low-level clairvoyance that allows them to glimpse aspects of other dimensions. However, their excessive attachments to fame and fortune have led them to establish false religions under the guise of promoting goodness, while in reality, they seek personal gain. These individuals cannot save others because they do not even realize they are lost themselves. The phenomenon of Qigong masters is a similar case. Some individuals claim to be the reincarnation of Buddha or are possessed by animal spirits, inflating their egos with titles such as Master of the Era. In reality, they are nothing more than chaotic entities bringing harm to humanity. Under the influence of misguided thoughts, humanity is self-destructing. Human relationships now revolve solely around money. For profit, people have no qualms about engaging in morally corrupt actions, from producing harmful goods to spreading pornographic culture that corrupts the spiritual fabric of society. From drug abuse and theft to fraud, people no longer abide by any ethical boundaries. Criminal syndicates, violent offenders, and gang culture have become idols for a generation of misguided youth, further deteriorating the state of society. You may be pursuing a spiritual path in Buddhism or Taoism, But if you spend your time lamenting losses related to worldly fame, fortune, or relationships, it reveals that your personal attachments have not yet been released. This cannot be considered true cultivation. Letting go of attachments to worldly matters is a critical barrier that defines the distinction between a true practitioner and an ordinary person. Every genuine cultivator must overcome this challenge to advance on the path of cultivation. When you feel suffering from the loss of fame, fortune, or emotions, it is a clear sign that these attachments still hold a strong grip on you. Understand that true cultivation is not inherently painful. The suffering comes from your inability to release worldly ties. It is the struggle to let go of fame, fortune, and emotions that creates difficulty. By confronting this, you can recognize where you stand in your practice and make progress toward true liberation. You once originated from pure and noble realms, yet, due to attachments, you have fallen into this material world. Instead of quickly cultivating to return to your original state, you continue to cling to the filth of the mundane world. Even a small loss in life brings you suffering. Do you know that the Buddha endured immense hardships while spreading the Dharma in this human realm? During his cultivation, he never faltered, no matter how many challenges and obstacles he faced. Excessive thoughts and emotions arise from a type of thought karma at work. Many people today mistakenly believe that every incomplete or imperfect thought they have in daily life is thought karma. This is a misunderstanding. If you no longer had any improper thoughts, what would there be left to cultivate? If you were completely pure, wouldn't you already be a Buddha? This is a critical misconception in the process of cultivation. True thought karma manifests when there are intense, disruptive reactions in your mind, such as vile or negative thoughts that slander others, and when you cannot eliminate or suppress them. These are genuine signs of thought karma. There are also weaker improper thoughts, which differ from ordinary fleeting thoughts. The key is to distinguish between them clearly, to avoid confusion during your cultivation journey. In a chaotic world where truth and falsehood are intertwined, the appearance of a Tathagata, an enlightened being, among ordinary people is naturally subtle and quiet. When the Dharma is spread, it is inevitable that deviant paths will emerge to interfere. True teachings and falsehood coexist, mingling in the same world. The most crucial aspect lies in the ability to discern and awaken to the truth. This capability belongs to the superior ones, those with wisdom and affinity to recognize the truth. Such individuals will gradually find their way, enter the path, attain the Dharma, and awaken to the truth. When they recognize the true Dharma, they will attain the true scriptures, and their body and mind will become light, their wisdom will unfold, and their soul will be fulfilled. These individuals will board the Dharma boat, gliding gently along the current of the Tao, progressing steadily. What a blessing this is! Let us strive diligently, with perseverance, to reach fulfillment. In contrast, those who struggle to awaken in this chaotic world, who live for wealth and die for power, whose joys and sorrows revolve around trivial gains, toil endlessly in conflict throughout their lives. These are the ones accumulating karma, shrouded by it, their wisdom sealed, and their true nature lost. Such individuals, when hearing this Dharma, will laugh and scoff, dismissing it as superstition. Their hearts cannot believe, nor can they comprehend. These people are known as inferior ones, who are exceedingly difficult to save. Their overwhelming karma clouds their entire being, seals their wisdom, and extinguishes their innate, pure nature. Some people believe only in what they can see and refuse to believe in what they cannot. This is the mindset of those who lack deep understanding, referred to as inferior ones. These individuals, living in delusion and surrounded by karmic forces, have their true natures obscured, preventing them from perceiving the truth. On the path of cultivation, one must first awaken, attain realization, and only then will they see. When one cultivates their heart and eliminates karmic forces, their true nature gradually reveals itself, and only then does everything become clear. Those with deeper enlightenment are called superior ones. Whether they see or not, they rely on their awakening to progress toward fulfillment. Some may perceive certain truths, while others may not. This depends on an individual's level and inherent foundation. Most cultivators cannot see because they carry desires and attachments which act as barriers. Only by letting go of all attachments can they see the truth. There are many reasons why a cultivator may not see clearly. It could be due to karmic forces blocking their path, circumstances not yet being ripe, or because the cultivation path itself is designed that way for them. Each person has their unique journey. When someone sees a part of the truth, they often gain clarity in one area, but remain obscured in another. This lack of complete clarity serves as an opportunity for them to continue their journey of realization and progress in cultivation. Conversely, if someone could see everything clearly, it would mean they have already achieved consummation and there would be nothing left to cultivate. In such a state, further awakening would no longer be necessary. One critical point to keep in mind is that the usual approach of studying theories or books should not be applied to cultivation. Many people tend to approach cultivation as they would when reading works of great authors, seeking meaningful quotes and comparing them to their own actions to emulate. However, this approach can hinder a cultivator's spiritual advancement. Some, upon hearing that cultivation contains profound inner meanings and offers guidance at different levels, attempt to analyze each word and sentence, hoping to uncover something extraordinary. Yet, this mindset often yields no results. Such an approach is influenced by habits formed through studying political theories or other academic disciplines, leading to misunderstandings about the methods of cultivation. True cultivation requires letting go of rigid analytical thinking and embracing the deeper, intuitive process of enlightenment. Only then can one progress steadily on the spiritual path. When practicing cultivation, people should not carry the mindset of seeking something specific to solve their problems, as this is also a form of attachment, even if it is in a more subtle form. Unless there are specific conflicts that need resolution, the most important aspect of proper cultivation is to avoid clinging to any purpose. Instead, approach the practice with a calm and tranquil mindset, free from excessive seeking. In many places, there are individuals with deep understanding of cultivation methods who serve as role models and organize excellent practice sites. However, some have not fully fulfilled their roles, particularly in terms of methodology. Certain assistants employ a command-style management approach, requiring practitioners to strictly follow their guidance to facilitate organizational efforts at practice sites. This is inappropriate, as cultivation must arise from individual willingness. If a practitioner is not voluntarily committed, external pressure will not resolve the issue and may even create conflicts. If these issues are not promptly addressed, conflicts will escalate, severely impacting the practice and the process of cultivation. Some individuals take this even further by creating rumors or engaging in sensational actions to enhance their reputation or showcase their special abilities, all to gain recognition. This is entirely wrong. Long-time cultivators are merely volunteers serving others, not masters, and they should not harbor attachments to fame or personal gain. So how can one assist others effectively? First, place yourself in the position of others and avoid seeing yourself as superior. If there are uncertainties in your work, humbly discuss and deliberate with others. If you make mistakes, openly admit them to the practitioners, saying, "I am also a cultivator like everyone else, so there may be errors in my work. I made a mistake here, so let's work together to correct it." When you approach tasks with sincerity and the intention to collaborate with everyone for the greater good, you will find the results vastly different. No one will criticize you. On the contrary, they will respect you more for your humility and open-heartedness. What does non-attachment mean? True non-attachment does not mean non-existence or the absence of materiality. Zen Buddhism has declined and no longer has anything to pass on. Yet, some scholars rigidly cling to the principle of emptiness, behaving as though they have grasped the essence of philosophy. Even Bodhidharma himself said that only the Dharma 6 generations later would have nothing left to transmit. Why is this realization still not understood? If one claims everything is empty, no Dharma, no Buddha, no form, no self, no existence, then what is Bodhidharma? If there is no Dharma, then what is the principle of emptiness in Zen Buddhism? If there is no Buddha and no form, then who is Shakyamuni? If one truly embraces emptiness, then why eat, drink, wear clothes, or even keep one's eyes intact? Why is there still attachment to the emotions and desires of ordinary people? Shakyamuni taught that emptiness does not mean nothingness, but refers to the absence of human sentiments. Without leakage is the absolute truth of emptiness. The universe is formed, exists, and persists through materiality. How could it be nothing? Without Shakyamuni's transmission, the living Dharma would be short-lived, and its principles would vanish entirely. The teachings of the Arhats are not the Buddha's Dharma. Let us awaken to this truth. When the Master is present, many people feel confident, but when the Master is absent, they easily lose the motivation to cultivate, as if they are practicing only for the Master or out of momentary inspiration. This is a weakness of those in the average practitioner group. Look at Shakyamuni Buddha, Jesus, Laozi, or Confucius. Though they lived more than 2,000 years ago, their disciples never thought that cultivation would be impossible without their physical presence. Cultivation is the responsibility of each individual. No one can practice on your behalf. The Master is merely a guide, but the effort to purify your mind, let go of attachments, and understand the truth must come from you alone. If you cultivate solely out of enthusiasm, your mind will waver easily. When faced with worldly temptations, you might forget your original purpose. Without maintaining steadfast faith, life can pass by without achieving anything meaningful, and the opportunity to cultivate in future lives will be extremely rare. Remember, cultivation is not for anyone else, it is for yourself. Determination and unwavering faith are the keys to progressing on the path of cultivation and ultimately achieving fulfillment. Maintaining your faith ensures your journey is never in vain. The Buddha taught that a person who lives for 100 years but is lazy and careless is not as valuable as someone who lives for just one day with diligence and persistence. This reflects the different values of life. Living one meaningful day is better than living 100 wasted years. As the saying goes, better a moment of brilliance before fading than a dull existence for 100 years. The Master wishes for the monks and Buddhists of the temple to live truly meaningful lives, lives filled with passion and purpose. Regardless of poverty or circumstances, we must live in a way that upholds human dignity. Each day, each task, and each challenge is an opportunity to change your life and improve yourself. The only way to overcome fear is to confront it head-on. Don't miss any opportunity to learn. When you are young, keep studying relentlessly to bring your goals closer. No matter how difficult life gets, perseverance is essential because only through perseverance can happiness be achieved. Don't be too hard on yourself. Each day, just strive to be 1% better than the day before, and after 100 days, you will have improved by 100%. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to others. Forgiving others is a gift of peace to yourself. Accept and embrace your inherent flaws and work on changing and overcoming what you can so your character continues to shine brightly. I believe you are doing your best in all that you are pursuing. If you ever feel tired, allow yourself to rest for a moment. Keep moving forward. You've got this.
Was the Buddha the first quantum physicist? Astonishing teachings of the Buddha. Welcome back, everyone, to Mind Podcast. It is clear that we can touch objects, observe events, visualize and describe mental images, and feel emotions within our consciousness. However, the Buddha stated that all of these are not real. They are merely illusions, and their true nature is emptiness, shunyata. Most scientists, scholars, and Western philosophers who study Buddhism are astonished and amazed by the Buddha's bold and transcendent discoveries. Indeed, the concept of the emptiness of all phenomena is exceedingly difficult to comprehend, as it transcends ordinary understanding and intelligence. Throughout the course of human civilization, and even today, no philosophical or religious system has proposed such an idea, except for the Buddha's teachings. The Dalai Lama has explained that even if we come to understand the concept of emptiness through reasoning and accept that the individual self or ego does not exist, real-life experiences shaped by the reality around us constantly challenge that perception. Thus, even if we understand what ana, non-self, is, we still feel ourselves and others, this and that, good and bad, right and wrong. So, how can we truly understand and effectively apply the concept of emptiness in our practice and daily life? Let's explore this in today's video. To see more fascinating videos, don't forget to like this one and subscribe to our channel. The idea of emptiness implies that the essence of the world and all things is void. They have no inherent existence, no intrinsic nature, and no independent reality. All phenomena, whether material or mental, are merely temporary combinations arising from dependent causes and conditions. They exist only as constructs of consciousness created by the mind and are not inherently real. The concept of emptiness holds essential meaning in Buddhist teachings. This is what makes Buddhism different from other religions, as well as from science and many philosophical schools. So does that mean the house we live in, the car we drive, and the food and clothes we use every day are not real? Not exactly. It is not that these things do not exist at all. They do exist, but they are not truly real, just like objects in a virtual world. They exist, but their existence is not ultimate. The 14th Dalai Lama has used quantum physics, also known as modern quantum mechanics, to relate to the concept of emptiness. We know that the material world is composed of many atoms from over 100 elements discovered in the universe. Each atom consists of a nucleus at the center and a cloud of electrons moving around it. The nucleus itself is made up of either protons, neutrons, or both. For example, the simplest atom, hydrogen, has a nucleus with only one proton, while the nucleus of helium contains 2 protons and 2 neutrons. A proton, in turn, is made up of 2 up quarks and 1 down quark, while a neutron is composed of 1 up quark and 2 down quarks. This is how modern physics describes the atomic structure of matter. However, atoms are mostly empty space. Quarks and electrons cannot exist independently. They only exist interdependently within the structure of the atom. An atom is composed of a nucleus at its center, with electrons revolving around it. The nucleus is only 1/1000th the size of the entire atom. For example, the diameter of a carbon atom is approximately 0.5 nanometers, which equals 1/2 billionth of a meter. Meanwhile, the protons and neutrons making up the nucleus are about 1/millionth of a nanometer in size, meaning a proton is 50 million times smaller than the entire atom. To grasp just how small this is, imagine magnifying a carbon atom, already incredibly tiny at 0.5 nanometers, to the size of the Earth, which would be an enlargement of 24 trillion times. Even at this scale, a quark would only measure about 5 millimeters, not even the size of a grain of rice. This detailed description illustrates that atoms are fundamentally empty. The matter that forms atoms, quarks and electrons, are not independent entities, as they cannot exist in isolation. A single quark cannot exist alone. It takes 3 quarks to form a proton or a neutron. Similarly, electrons cannot remain stationary. They are always in motion. According to Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, it is impossible to simultaneously determine both the momentum and position of an electron. The essence of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle is that it is impossible to precisely determine the position and momentum of an electron simultaneously. From a Buddhist perspective, this suggests that quarks cannot exist independently, and electrons are like illusions, similar to flowers in the sky, mere projections without inherent reality. Due to a single moment of ignorance, avidya, we perceive the interdependent combination of causes and conditions as material atoms, which in turn constitute galaxies, stars, mountains, earth, all beings and objects. This synchronized experience through the senses, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, creates the illusion of reality. Yet, in truth, there is nothing inherently real. As summarized in the Cheng Wei Shi Lun treatise on the perfection of consciousness only by Xuanzan, the 3 realms are mind only, and all phenomena are consciousness only. Practitioners who attain enlightenment through Buddhism realize the mind is like space, vast, formless, and without possession. This insight reveals the true nature of the universe as formless and devoid of inherent characteristics. Modern science has achieved the ability to split the nucleus of uranium-235, resulting in the formation of uranium-236, barium, and krypton. However, it cannot break apart the proton or neutron, as doing so would require infinite energy. Scientists refer to the confinement of quarks within protons or neutrons as permanent confinement, meaning they can never be separated. In Buddhism, this state of confinement is likened to the mind's stubborn attachment, which arises from the initial moment of ignorance. It is due to this ignorance that we perceive atoms, the universe, and all phenomena as real. The Buddha's teachings state that the mind is boundless and infinite, unrestricted by space or time. This boundless mind has the capacity to shatter the illusion of confinement. However, it is due to this moment of ignorance that the perception of atoms, material objects, the world, and all beings arises. Without that initial moment of ignorance, avidya, the illusory world would disappear, as it has no inherent reality, just like everything on a computer screen vanishes when the device is powered off, because it was only an illusion, not real. The state of non-conceptual awareness, the absence of ignorant thoughts, reveals that the world is fundamentally empty and non-existent. However, even though the world is seen as an illusion, there is still an apparent structure, but being illusory, it lacks true reality. It only manifests when a thought arises, which Buddhism refers to as beginningless ignorance. In the state of non-conceptual awareness, there is no distinction between consciousness and matter. In fact, material atoms are just a hardened form of consciousness, frozen by attachment, specifically the attachment to things as real. This attachment obscures direct perception and limits awareness. Beginningless ignorance refers to a state without knowledge or substance, lacking both space and time. In this state, quarks and electrons exist merely in potential form, unshaped and seemingly non-existent, as abstract quanta of invisible energy. When an ignorant thought arises, these potential forms manifest as material atoms. The German philosopher Immanuel Kant referred to this structure as the thing in itself, an entity beyond comprehension, impossible to know as it truly is. Any knowledge acquired through consciousness becomes distorted, diverging from the original truth. Today, many leading scientists also acknowledge this idea. Niels Bohr, the Danish physicist who won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1922, stated that fundamental particles, when isolated, are mere abstract virtual particles. Werner Heisenberg, the German theoretical physicist and Nobel laureate of 1932, who developed the uncertainty principle, explained that atoms and fundamental particles form a potential world, a realm of possibilities rather than concrete, physical entities. According to Heisenberg, atoms are not solid objects. The potential world he described awaits specific conditions to become manifest reality. It takes a second moment of ignorance, referred to in Buddhist terminology as initial ignorance, avidya, for this potential reality to manifest. In ordinary terms, this is known as consciousness, vijnana. When material structures develop into living beings equipped with sensory faculties, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and brain, Buddhism calls these the six sense bases, shadayatana. When these six sense bases interact with their respective objects, formed, smell, taste, touch, and mental phenomena, they give rise to the six consciousnesses: visual, auditory, olfactory, gustatory, tactile, and mental consciousness. Mental consciousness is a composite awareness arising from the interaction between the sense bases and sensory objects, giving birth to conceptual thought. Buddhism holds that material objects are illusions without inherent reality. However, when the brain synthesizes sensory input and generates a thought, material objects are mistakenly perceived as real. This misperception is what Buddhism calls initial ignorance, avidya. From this initial thought, subsequent thoughts arise continuously, forming consciousness and leading to the belief that there is an objective world independent of consciousness. Quantum physics, however, has revealed that there is no independently existing objective world outside of consciousness, only a subjective world created by consciousness. John von Neumann, a Hungarian-American mathematician who made significant contributions to quantum mechanics and computer science, stated that nothing is real unless consciousness exists. According to von Neumann, all realities are composed of consciousness, a view that stands in stark contrast to materialism. Eugene Wigner, a Hungarian physicist and mathematician who won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1963, also remarked that the deeper we explore the external world, the more we arrive at the conclusion that the contents of consciousness are the ultimate reality. A particle only exists when observed, implying that consciousness is a fundamental component of reality. In Zen practice, when practitioners reach the state of throat of doubt, the initial stage of beginningless ignorance, they gain insight into emptiness. However, this is not yet full enlightenment, kensho. The practitioner must take one more step, referred to in the sutras as Baichi Gan Togengi Jin Bu, taking one step beyond the 100-foot pole. This metaphor likens the spiritual journey to climbing a 100-foot pole. Even after reaching the top, one must take one final step to attain enlightenment. The Buddha used the image of a person climbing a 100-foot pole to symbolize this process. Even after scaling the full height of the pole, there remains one step that must be taken, a leap beyond thought and perception to reach true awakening. There is no longer a place to cling to, which is called non-attachment. To give rise to the mind without abiding anywhere refers to what? It is precisely returning to the initial ignorance. Due to delusion, one embarks on cultivation, only to return to delusion upon reaching enlightenment. Or, does it mean simply returning to the mundane world to see that mountains are mountains and water is water, perceiving all things as ordinary as others do? However, the state of mind has changed, no longer clinging, having realized the nature of non-attachment and the original face of reality. This is precisely what the Heart Sutra means when it says, "There is no ignorance, nor the ending of ignorance. There is no old age and death, nor the ending of old age and death. There is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cessation of suffering, and no path. There is no wisdom and no attainment, because there is nothing to attain." Therefore, a person who has realized the nature of things can outwardly appear like an ordinary person without any conceptual attachments, unaffected by the constraints of atomic phenomena. The constraints of quarks within protons and neutrons symbolize the mind's clinging to the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Breaking free from these constraints is liberation, freedom from birth and death, living in harmony with the Dharma realm of Indra's net, where principle and phenomena interpenetrate without obstruction. Great masters such as the sixth patriarch Huineng and other enlightened beings like Hanshan and Shi have left behind incorruptible bodies at the Nanhua Temple in Shaogan, Guangdong, China. In summary, emptiness in Buddhism is explicitly taught in the Prajnaparamita Heart Sutra and elaborated in Nagarjuna's Middle Way treatise. It is also validated by quantum physics through the understanding of the three elementary particles that make up atoms: quarks, leptons, and electrons. These particles are virtual and cannot exist independently but must rely on each other, illustrating the principle of dependent origination through atomic structures. In reality, atoms are empty. What we perceive as solid matter is merely the sensation created by electron clouds around atomic nuclei. This concept of emptiness is also demonstrated clearly through the invention of computers. The phenomena displayed on screens, texts, images, sound, and videos, are merely illusions, a web of interdependent phenomena. The electrons flowing as electric currents defined as zeros and ones in binary systems form the foundation of everything we see as letters, images, and sound. These entities can interact as if real, yet their essence is empty, nothing at all. Because after all, the electron is not an entity that can exist independently. Thus, the emptiness, shunyata of the universe and all things is evident and undeniable. Matter exists only within the grasping mind, rooted in the initial ignorance of delusion. The grasping mind is extremely rigid and persists even after the physical body dies. It reincarnates into another body and another life. Only through complete enlightenment, by thoroughly eradicating all erroneous habits, can the mind let go of its grasping. Realizing emptiness is not to cling to the notion of emptiness. Clinging to emptiness would lead to uselessness. On the contrary, emptiness is the foundation of all phenomena and the wondrous functions of all dharma. Precisely because everything is empty, all things manifest without obstruction, without conflict or competition. For example, in cyberspace, everything is an illusion. When the right conditions are met, a file appears on the screen when we open it. Similarly, when those conditions cease and we close the file, it vanishes without leaving a trace. This is the nature of unobstructed existence. If everything were real, a file that appeared on the screen would remain there permanently, leaving no room for anything else to appear. Similarly, in life, because all things are illusory and empty, countless worlds can coexist without obstruction. The past, present, and future all freely manifest within our consciousness. However, in the external everyday world, things do not work that way. Ideally, when we imagine a grand, well-built house, it should instantly appear in the external world. But that is not the case. What we see may still be a dilapidated, rundown hut. To build a grand house, we must work hard, save money, and over time, we can finally construct it. This is because ordinary life operates within the constraints of space, time, and quantity. Turning thought into reality takes time and requires space. Material resources and energy are also limited. The root cause of these limitations lies in our attachments and clinging to forms. In contrast, the spiritual mind, free of attachments, possesses no such constraints and thus transcends ordinary limitations. If one were to attain the spiritual power and enlightenment of the Buddha, it would theoretically be possible to manipulate atomic nuclei, transforming water into houses or any essential items for life in an instant. However, in reality, the Buddha did not perform such feats because they held no meaningful purpose. Instead, he focused on teaching people the origin of suffering and the path to liberation from it. Yet, one of the Buddha's disciples, Mahamoggallana, did perform a miraculous act on one occasion. During a large Buddhist assembly held in Shravasti under the auspices of King Pasenadi, attendees needed to cross the Asai River to enter the city for the event. However, on that day, the river swelled, and strong winds and waves made it impossible for small boats to cross. In response, Moggallana created a sturdy bridge, allowing the Buddhist delegations to cross safely and participate in the gathering. Similarly, according to the Christian Bible, Jesus performed a miracle during a special circumstance. At a sermon by the Sea of Galilee, attended by 5,000 men, excluding women and children, the crowd grew hungry. However, Jesus' companions had only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Jesus broke the bread and divided the fish, feeding everyone present until they were satisfied, with 12 baskets of bread left over afterward. Even in modern times, there are Qigong masters with extraordinary abilities, like Zhan Baosheng and Ho Shan Yu, who reportedly can move objects through space using mental energy. When these objects are transported in such a way, they exhibit non-obstructive qualities, effortlessly passing through walls or solid matter, similar to how electromagnetic waves carrying radio or television signals penetrate walls and reach our receivers. Scientists have also been exploring teleportation methods. They transform an object into quantum states, transmit it across space, and reassemble it back into its original form at the destination. So far, they have successfully achieved this with photons, particles of light, and electrons, which are widely utilized in transmitting information through telecommunications networks and the internet. However, teleporting physical objects presents significant challenges because it requires infinite energy to completely transform a material atom into quantum form, a feat that current science has yet to achieve. Thus, in reality, only Qigong masters can achieve teletransportation through spiritual methods. True spirituality is a form of infinite energy. Understanding the emptiness, shunyata, of all things is not about clinging to nothingness, but about harmonizing actions and behavior in accordance with truth. When one comprehends the nature of emptiness, one realizes that all phenomena are impermanent. They are not real and exist only temporarily, never lasting forever. Similarly, all dharmas are without self. Things and events lack inherent essence or ego. With this realization, people come to cherish this fleeting life and respect the lives of all beings. They no longer overvalue the ego, which leads to harm for others and selfish gain. Without deceit, competition, or struggle for personal benefit, the world would have order and peace. Understanding emptiness as infinite opens the way to countless possibilities. It provides room to accommodate all beings, making competition unnecessary. This serves as the foundation for building global peace and happiness. The concept of emptiness is most profoundly discussed in the Prajnaparamita Heart Sutra, a concise Mahayana scripture. The Chinese translation by Xuanzang consists of only 260 characters, with the original likely composed between 100 BCE and the 2nd century CE. A portion of the text reads as follows. When the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara was practicing deeply the Prajnaparamita, he clearly saw that all 5 aggregates are empty, thus transcending all suffering and distress. Shariputra, form is not different from emptiness, and emptiness is not different from form. Form is precisely emptiness, and emptiness is precisely form. The same is true for feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Shariputra, all dharmas are marked with emptiness. They neither arise nor cease, are neither impure nor pure, neither increase nor decrease. Therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, perception, mental formation, or consciousness. There is no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, or mind. No sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, or object of mind. There is no realm of the eye up to no realm of mind consciousness. There is no ignorance and no end to ignorance, no old age and death and no end to old age and death. There is no suffering, no cause, no cessation, and no path. There is no wisdom and no attainment, because there is nothing to attain. The Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, by practicing the profound wisdom of Prajnaparamita, sees that all five aggregates are empty and thus transcends all suffering. Thus, one can transcend all suffering and difficulties. Shariputra, form does not differ from emptiness, and emptiness does not differ from form. Form is precisely emptiness, and emptiness is precisely form. The same applies to feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Shariputra, the emptiness of all dharmas is neither born nor destroyed, neither pure nor impure, neither increased nor decreased. Therefore, in this emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, perception, mental formation, or consciousness. There are no eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, or mind. There are no sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, or objects of mind. There is no realm of the eye up to no realm of mind consciousness. There is no ignorance and no end to ignorance, no old age and death and no end to old age and death. There is no suffering, no cause, no cessation, and no path. There is no wisdom, and there is no attainment, because there is nothing to attain. Hopefully, today's video will help you gain a deeper understanding of emptiness and apply it effectively to your practice and daily life. Don't forget to share your thoughts and perspectives in the comments section below. What did the Buddha do to achieve enlightenment? Welcome back, everyone, to Mind Podcast. According to you, does enlightenment equate to nirvana? Recently, through following Buddhist events, I have noticed a common trend. Most of us still hold the belief that diligently practicing, chanting Buddhist scriptures, and making offerings will one day lead us to boundless blessings and ultimately enlightenment. But this is not entirely correct. We tend to search everywhere, exploring various methods of practice. Today we study under one teacher, but then discover another teacher whose teachings seem better. If one method seems challenging, we switch to another method that appears more effective. We end up trapped in a cycle without finding a way out. Take a moment to stop, just 30 seconds, and ask yourself, why are we practicing? What is the ultimate goal of practice? Is it enlightenment and liberation? Do we truly understand what enlightenment means? And is it only Buddhism that can lead us to enlightenment? What about other religions? Let's explore these questions in today's video. Unlike the religions originating from India, the monotheistic religions rooted in the teachings of Abraham, such as Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, do not have the concept of a self-directed path to enlightenment. The scriptures of these religions do not contain any terms equivalent to enlightenment or liberation. Instead, saints in these traditions encounter God through divine revelation. For example, Jesus Christ experienced revelation in the desert, and the Prophet Muhammad received revelation on Mount Sinai. These monotheistic religions are based on faith, and their followers do not pursue personal enlightenment, but instead rely on divine blessings from God. In Christianity, the term illumination is perhaps the closest to enlightenment. According to the Bible, Jesus Christ's spiritual illumination began when he was baptized and blessed by John the Baptist in the Jordan River. This signifies that spiritual illumination in Christianity requires baptism and divine grace. The Abrahamic religions do not promote practices aimed at achieving liberation as a final goal. Instead, they emphasize maintaining faith to reach heaven. The hope and aspiration of believers in these religions are to reach heaven after death. Heaven is understood as a realm of immortality and happiness. In Islamic mosques, depictions of paradise can be seen on walls, portraying scenes of joy and bliss, which resemble the concept of celestial realms in the Buddhist worldview. In Hinduism, enlightenment is believed to be the union with Brahman or communion with the heavenly realms. This communion is achieved through meditation techniques, such as yoga, or even by the power of faith. According to Brahmanic philosophy, when enlightenment is attained, the individual ego is no longer confined to the earthly body, but expands into higher and more vast realms. Ultimately, the goal is to become one with the Supreme Self, Atman. Famous contemporary Indian spiritual teachers, such as Vivekananda, Jiddu Krishnamurti, and Osho, often spoke of becoming one with God. Enlightenment in Hinduism is typically described by phrases like, all is one, or unity with the divine. However, according to Indian philosophers, no Hindu religious tradition has fully achieved the absolute unity with Brahman, the ultimate Supreme Self. Union with Brahman remains an ideal within the scriptures. In practice, the various sects of Hinduism often worship specific deities rather than Brahman itself. For example, they might worship Brahma, the god of creation in the realm of form, or other deities such as Vishnu, Shiva, or Saraswati from the mythologies of Indian philosophical systems. Many Vietnamese mistakenly follow Brahmanic practices, thinking they are part of Buddhist tradition. These practitioners believe that experiencing light in meditation marks success, as they regard light as the essence of the world and equate it with the Buddha nature. Osho, a renowned contemporary guru who claimed no affiliation with any particular school of thought, defined enlightenment as the light within. He stated, "Enlightenment is nothing but you becoming light. Your essence becomes light. Enlightenment is simply the experience of your consciousness being unpolluted by delusions, sensations, or emotions. When the mind is completely empty, it becomes an explosive experience, a mental atomic explosion. All your wisdom bursts forth as light without origin or cause. Once it manifests, it stays with you forever, even in your sleep. That light shines within you, and from that moment on, you can perceive everything in the world in a profoundly different way. After such an experience, no questions remain within you." Osho emphasized the experience of inner light and regarded it as the definitive sign of enlightenment. This concept aligns with the understanding of enlightenment in many meditation traditions within Indian spirituality. However, in Buddhism, while inner light can arise during meditation and insight practices, it is not considered a definitive sign of enlightenment. Buddhism offers a nuanced understanding of the nature of inner light. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha discussed radiance and light but connected these only to wisdom. He described 4 types of radiance. 1. The radiance of the moon. 2. The radiance of the sun. 3. The radiance of fire. 4. The radiance of wisdom. When the Buddha gave his first sermon, he spoke of light emerging within him during his enlightenment experience. "Monks, with regard to the truths I had never before heard, vision arose within me, knowledge arose within me, insight arose within me, wisdom arose within me, and light arose within me." This light arises when the mind becomes deeply concentrated and united with insight. Such a mind generates radiance purely from within. With this light, one can penetrate the ultimate reality and perceive things as they truly are. Thus, in Buddhism, light serves as a byproduct of wisdom. But enlightenment is not defined by light alone. It is the profound realization of ultimate truth. This concept can be likened to entering a dark room. We need light to see everything within. However, the perception of light in meditation differs greatly between Hinduism and Buddhism. In Hinduism, light in meditation is seen as an end goal, whereas in Buddhism, it is merely a means of practice. Some meditators may feel joyful when they experience visual or auditory phenomena during meditation. However, true meditation involves the effort to still the restless mind. Thus, hearing strange sounds or seeing unusual forms can indicate failure in meditation rather than progress. During seated meditation, the body's nervous system can become imbalanced, and the mind is prone to falling into hallucinatory states. The types of insights generated in Brahmanic meditation are known as insights of concentration. These insights, derived from various forms of concentration meditation, can only lead to celestial realms within the 3 planes of existence: the sensual realm, Kamaloka, the form realm, Rupaloka, and the formless realm, Arupaloka. However, these insights cannot lead to the realization of nirvana, nor can they end the cycle of birth and death, samsara. The term Buddha, the enlightened one, was known and used before the historical Buddha appeared in India. It referred to enlightenment, and spiritual seekers often pondered the question, who is the Buddha? Who has attained enlightenment? There is a well-known story of an elderly Brahmin named Bavari, who heard rumors that the ascetic Gautama, reputed to be the Buddha, had arrived in his town. Curious, Bavari decided to meet him. When the Brahmin arrived, the Buddha was in the middle of a discussion with many people. Since Bavari was well respected, the crowd made way for him, allowing him to approach. The Buddha also recognized Bavari as a venerable Brahmin, a teacher of many generations, and invited him to sit at the front of the assembly beside him. Bavari then addressed the Buddha. "Venerable Gautama, I wish to ask you some questions." The Buddha welcomed his inquiries, and Bavari presented his questions in a 4-line verse, asking the fundamental question: how can one be called the Buddha, the enlightened one? The Buddha responded with a verse: "What should be known, I have known. What should be abandoned, I have abandoned. What should be developed, I have developed. Therefore, O Brahmin, I am a Buddha." This response succinctly highlights 3 essential characteristics of an enlightened being. These qualities are not exclusive to a Buddha, but also represent the 3 goals we strive toward when following the Buddha's teachings. If someone asks the fundamental purpose of taking refuge in the 3 jewels, following moral precepts, or practicing meditation, your answer should align with these 3 points. Fully understanding what should be known, letting go of what should be abandoned, developing what needs to be cultivated. These are the goals of the Buddhist path and the 3 achievements that mark the attainment of enlightenment. If you are familiar with the Buddha's first sermon, you will recognize that these 3 tasks correspond to 3 of the 4 noble truths. The first noble truth is the truth of dukkha, often translated as suffering, dissatisfaction, or stress. The task related to this truth is to fully comprehend it. The second noble truth is the origin of suffering, known as the truth of samudaya, the cause being craving, tanha. The task here is to abandon craving. The fourth noble truth is the noble eightfold path, known as the truth of magga. This truth needs to be cultivated. One noble truth not directly referenced in the Buddha's verse is the third truth, nirodha, the cessation of suffering, also called the truth of nirodha. It carries its own task. The cessation of suffering must be realized. When the first 3 tasks are accomplished, the realization of the truth of the cessation of suffering will naturally follow. You might have encountered representations of serene lotus flowers, the majestic Dharma wheel, or intricate pagodas in Buddhist art. However, do you know that the Dharma wheel consists of an axle, spokes, and a rim, symbolizing the 3 aspects of the Buddha's teachings: ethics, wisdom, and concentration? Or have you heard of the terrifying ritual objects of Tibetan esoteric traditions, such as the kangling, a horn made from a human thigh bone? This instrument, shaped like a curved horn, emits sounds that please wrathful deities while instilling fear in all evil spirits and demons. Possessing such a thigh bone horn symbolizes the deity's control over the 3 realms. A comprehensive understanding of the rich symbols, mythical motifs, and mysterious rituals is essential. Above all, it invites us to admire the unique artistic beauty and profound philosophy of Buddhism, particularly Tibetan Vajrayana Buddhism. In the ancient world, the Handbook of Tibetan Buddhist Symbols was considered a must-have. This book remains one of the best sellers in the art and religious photography category on Amazon, after 8 years of dedicated research. It features meticulously hand-drawn illustrations by Robert Beer, exclusively for this work. Readers will explore the exquisite art of Tibet, admiring the vibrant beauty of Buddhist paintings, statues, and artifacts deeply embedded in Tibetan cultural identity. This book is not only for those passionate about Buddhism, but also a wonderful gift for artists, designers, and lovers of Eastern art and culture. Ultimately, it appeals to anyone who appreciates spiritual values, seeking knowledge and enlightenment. This book will guide you toward the spiritual values of Buddhism, helping you find inner peace and discover the path to enlightenment within yourself. The teaching that our task is to know what should be known raises an essential question. What is it that we must understand? What we need to know and comprehend are the things closest to us, what we usually consider as our self. What we call the self is, in reality, a complex combination of body and mind. For most of us, from birth to death, our minds are directed outward, constantly seeking pleasure and sensual gratification to elevate the self, and affirm the identity of the ego. Very few take a moment to stop, turn inward, and reflect. What is this thing I call myself? What is the I behind the identity I create for myself? If you pause for a moment, you will realize that this is perhaps the most important question we can ask. If, from the day you were born until your final breath, the best you can do when asked, "Who are you? What is your identity?" is to present a driver's license or birth certificate without truly knowing who or what you are, then you have embarked on a rather poor journey from birth to death. Following the Buddha's teachings, our task is to investigate what we mean by I, me, and mine. These terms seem to point toward a lasting, solid entity, a self or ego that possesses a true identity. However, the Buddha taught that all such notions are deceptive. When we scrutinize these words, I, myself, and mine, we find only the components of bodily and mental experiences. To support this investigation, the Buddha neatly classified these components into 5 aggregates, known as the 5 aggregates of clinging, or 5 skandhas. These aggregates represent the elements we cling to with the mistaken belief, this is mine, this is who I am, this is my true self. Thus, we realize that behind the concepts of I and self lie only the 5 aggregates, skandhas. 1. Form aggregate, rupa skandha. This refers to the physical body and the material elements that constitute it. 2. Sensation aggregate, vedana skandha. These are sensations, pleasant, painful, or neutral, arising from contact with objects. 3. Perception aggregate, sanya skandha. This involves the mental function of identifying, recognizing, and remembering the characteristics of things. 4. Mental formation aggregate, sankhara skandha. This includes various mental activities such as intentions and volitional actions. 5. Consciousness aggregate, vijnana skandha. This is the light of awareness arising from the 6 sense bases, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Together, these 5 aggregates make up what we conventionally call the self. Our task, according to the Buddha's teachings, is to recognize and understand the true nature of these 5 aggregates, thereby realizing what constitutes our real identity from birth, through adulthood, old age, and finally death. This entire process is merely a continuation of the 5 aggregates, bound together by conditions and arising due to specific causes. Through insight into impermanence, we see that all beings arise and pass away. This realization brings a deep understanding of suffering, for the aggregates by their nature are unstable, unreliable, and insecure. Recognizing their impermanent and ever-changing nature, we come to see that these aggregates cannot be identified as our true self. They are empty and without inherent self. This is the teaching of Anna, non-self. The second goal taught by the Buddha is to abandon what must be abandoned. What must be abandoned are mental defilements, kilesa, a term used to refer to all mental states that cause suffering and unhappiness in our lives. The Buddha's teachings provide a detailed examination of the mind, helping us understand how it functions. These investigations are not carried out in the abstract way that modern psychology might describe mental processes. Instead, Buddhist psychology clearly identifies values and insights that guide us toward liberation and well-being. It draws clear distinctions in terms of ethics, without hesitation or ambiguity, because ethical distinctions are crucial for our pursuit of happiness and avoidance of suffering. According to the Buddha's teachings, unethical actions and unwholesome mental states can never lead to true and lasting happiness. Instead, they inevitably sow the seeds of suffering and misery. It is true that polluted mental states, particularly greed and desire, often bring with them a sense of pleasure or delight. If this were not the case, the world would be full of enlightened beings. However, the pleasure associated with craving and greed is merely a superficial layer covering harmful seeds. When these seeds sprout and bear fruit, they bring suffering, whether in this life or in future lives. Conversely, wholesome mental states may sometimes be accompanied by present discomfort, as growth often requires us to go against the natural inclinations of the mind. However, when these wholesome states take root and bear fruit, they inevitably bring happiness, peace, and inner tranquility. This process aligns with the moral law of cause and effect. Unwholesome mental states are referred to as kilesa, often translated as defilements, because they cause suffering. They can also be translated as pollutants, because they taint and corrupt the mind. The Buddha analyzed the nature of these defilements and beautifully explained how they can all be traced back to three core pollutants: greed, lobha, hate, dosa, and delusion, moha. Our task in following the Buddha's teachings and practicing the Dhamma is to overcome, eliminate, and abandon these defilements. Greed and hatred, which give rise to many other branches of suffering, ultimately stem from ignorance or delusion. Thus, the ultimate aim in removing defilements lies in eliminating ignorance, which is the root cause. We must eliminate ignorance, for ignorance obscures the five aggregates, leading us to mistakenly believe in concepts such as I, mine, and self. The way to overcome ignorance or delusion is through the first task, knowing what should be known. When we know what needs to be known, ignorance disappears, and with it, greed, hatred, and all other defilements vanish. However, this cannot be achieved simply by wishing for it. We cannot expect to merely think, "I want to know what must be known," and have it instantly understood. This is why the entire practice of Buddhism is a gradual process of following a path. The great gift that the Buddha gave the world is not just a profound philosophy or psychology, but a practical, systematic path that can be applied in every aspect of life. Following the path means developing what needs to be developed. This is the third task mentioned in the Buddha's four-line verse. What should be developed, I have developed. What the Buddha developed is precisely what we must develop. One cultivates the path to abandon what must be abandoned, namely the defilements. And one also cultivates the path to know what needs to be known, the five aggregates. How does one develop this path? Once again, the path is structured to progress gradually, step by step, not suddenly. This structure helps us climb the ladder toward liberation and enlightenment. The first step is to control the coarser manifestations of defilements by adhering to moral discipline. One accomplishes this by observing the precepts, such as the 5 precepts or the 8 precepts, which help restrain the more obvious forms of defilements that manifest as unwholesome actions. Observing the precepts is not only about refraining from negative actions, it also involves actively cultivating positive actions. Through this practice, we gradually purify the mind, reduce the influence of defilements, and progress step by step along the path toward liberation. Ethical actions cultivate the mind with pure and wholesome qualities. One must cultivate compassion and kindness toward others, honesty in interactions, truthfulness in communication, and responsibility toward family and society. Practicing right livelihood with diligence, respecting others, maintaining patience during difficulties, and being humble and upright, these virtues gradually purify the mind, making it clear, bright, and radiant. However, developing ethics alone is not enough. One must go further and cultivate concentration, samadhi. When we make efforts to collect and focus the mind, we begin to understand how it functions. Through observing our mental processes, we gradually reshape the mind, weakening and eroding unwholesome and defiled qualities. This process is like scraping away the soil that holds unwholesome roots. These roots have existed within us since beginningless time. Thus, the path is neither quick nor easy. It requires gradual effort, persistence, and dedication. With consistent practice, the mind will become stable, steady, and well-concentrated, developing the capacity to remain focused on an object without wavering. This stability creates the conditions for the emergence of wisdom. Wisdom, panya, is the third quality that must be cultivated. Wisdom arises through reflection and investigation, not merely from meditation, but also in daily life. By studying the Buddha's teachings, particularly core teachings such as the 5 aggregates, dependent origination, and the 4 noble truths, we explore the Dhamma, fostering conceptual wisdom. In doing so, we begin to uproot ignorance at its core. Simply studying and reflecting on the teachings already starts to loosen the deep roots of ignorance. Yet, ultimate wisdom comes from direct experience. When one has developed a strong and stable mind, it is used to examine the 5 aggregates. Through direct observation of one's own experiences, one sees their true nature and the actual characteristics of phenomena. Initially, one observes the arising and passing away of the aggregates, gaining insight into their impermanence, anicca. Seeing their impermanent nature reveals that they are unsatisfactory, dukkha. Nothing in them is worth clinging to. Because they are impermanent and unsatisfactory, one realizes that they cannot be identified with a true, enduring self. This is the insight into the emptiness or non-self, anatta, of the aggregates. This marks the awakening of vipassana, insight meditation. With insight, one continues to cut deeper into the roots of ignorance until the true nature of the aggregates is fully understood. When one can say that they have known what needs to be known, the defilements that should be abandoned are eradicated, and the path that needs to be developed has been cultivated. At that point, one realizes what must be realized: the cessation of suffering, here and now. According to the Buddha's words, this is the condition that defines an enlightened being, a fully awakened one.